Hello, this is to review the investigation we conducted on how do fish react to changes in water temperature. First, we created a hypothesis, which is just a statement that we use as a testable question or testable sentence. It can be framed in different ways. Either way, there's no such thing as a right or wrong hypothesis. It's just if the data supports it or does not support it. In this example, I chose if the temperature of water in a fish's habitat is increased, then the breathing rate of the fish will increase because temperature, which is an abiotic factor, affects how much oxygen is in water and how fish breathe, which is a biotic factor. But we could have just as easily set up the hypothesis in a different format to see if data supports it or does not support it. It's just an educated guess. And we counted the dependent variable, which is the number of fish breaths for goldfish versus sunfish versus catfish, as we changed the independent variable, which in this case was temperature. We collected data in groups and then compiled it or brought it all together in one group, in one data table. So with this data sharing, we were able to see that goldfish breathed the most compared to the three fish, and sunfish breathed the least. And then and also note that in data collection, there's often some variation that is natural. It has to do with accuracy and precision in data collection, which comes with time and is something that all scientists keep in mind as they move forward. So my numbers might be one or two different than what the group collected. Then we looked at the independent variable of this experiment. So whenever we look at a table, we first want to read the title, How Temperature Increase Affects Fish Breathing Rate. Then we want to look at what we're looking at, which in this case are three fish over time as the temperature increases. So the goldfish was blue, too bad it couldn't have been gold. Sunfish is red, catfish is yellow. And as the temperature on the x-axis increased, in this case using degrees Celsius, 5, 10, 15, 20, etc., then the number of breaths were measured, and once that was plotted, then we saw that the data increased. The fish breathing rate increased. In science, we always place the dependent variable, what we're measuring as a result of a change, on the y-axis. That's called the dependent variable on the y-axis. And the independent variable, the thing that we're changing and experimenting with, on the x-axis. I really wish somebody would have taught me that in high school and college, because that really saved a lot of thinking in the future. So in science, we change something and then we measure the results. Changing the something goes on the x-axis, measuring the results goes on the y-axis. The dependent variable is dependent on the changes we make in the independent variable. According to the graph on temperature change effects on fish, the independent variable is simply temperature in degrees Celsius on the x-axis. In science, we're just changing stuff, and we have to label the things that we're changing. So if we're changing something, that variable is called the independent variable, and the other thing that we're measuring is called the dependent variable. Otherwise, we would get confused if we were trying to communicate it otherwise. Then we looked at what was the overall effect of temperature changes on the fish. As the temperature of the water increased, all fish breathed more, or their breathing rate increased. This may be due to the decreased levels of dissolved oxygen available in the water as it heats up. So same graph, but we can see that the data trends show that all three lines, all three fish breathing rates increased as we increased temperature. Then we compared the three fish, goldfish, sunfish, or catfish, to see which one would be most adapted for temperature increases in their environment. So the species of fish that is most adapted to temperature increases is the sunfish, because the number of breaths increased the least. So compared to the catfish just above it, or the goldfish way above it, the sunfish breathed the least over time. So that we can infer that the sunfish didn't have as much of an issue with breathing as the temperature increased, whereas the goldfish had to breathe much, much, much more, and the catfish had to breathe a little bit more. So we can infer that the sunfish is the most adapted, it's the most able to deal with that new environment compared to the other two fish. Conversely, or oppositely, the species of fish that is the least adapted based on this data is the goldfish, because it breathed the most. Okay. Now, we can't ever just say that that is absolutely the case because there might be other factors going on, but according to this data and what we're specifically looking at, we can make that inference. We can infer, even though we would need to do more tests to really look at that correlation to see if there's more than just correlation. It would be causation. But right now we're just looking at that data trend to make that inference. If you did the bonus at the end, you can see how this all fits into the big picture. The big picture is how organisms interact in an environment. Abiotic and biotic factors are always interacting as far as how we live in our environment. The fish that breathe the most are least adapted for changes in temperature in their ecosystem. When compared to the other fish, sunfish breathe the least with increasing temperature, so they did not have to breathe harder for the oxygen. This means they may not be able to, this means they may be able to handle changes in ecosystems more than other fish. Okay, so in this example, the sunfish might be more able to deal with changes than the goldfish or the catfish. The reasoning for all of this is that abiotic factors such as temperature and oxygen affect biotic factors and the health of the ecosystems. It is all connected. That was the big picture of this lesson. If you have any more questions or want to revise your writing and add more detail, please let me know, because this is a reassessable check for understanding where we always want to improve our writing. Remember, no single word answers will be accepted, as we are looking for full sentences. Thank you. Bye-bye.